Today marked the second annual Chalk the Police Day. Now we have a special guest, Garrett Ian from freeconcord.org, to talk about today's event.
Welcome, Garrett.
Hey, good to be here.
So, what is Chalk the Police Day?
Chalk the Police Day is an event which started last year. October 1st of 2011 marked the first Chalk the Police Day. And I believe what kicked it into action was the fact that the Chalking Aid incident had just occurred in Manchester a few weeks earlier. On June 4th, 2011, myself and 8 other people were either arrested or given citations for either chalking or not following the orders of the police to move away from the chalkings fast enough. So today, being the second Chalk the Police Day, I was here in Keene this year, and when I got out there at about 2:30, I noticed there was already a nice crowd of activists out there chalking Central Square, which seemed to be the primary location. And at one point, there was a man who called out to the people who were chalking from the street that they had to stop what they were doing, and I assumed it was just an annoyed passerby, and myself and other people invited him over to chalk with us. What ended up happening, I didn't see this happen. He parked in traffic, blocking a lane in Central Square, which is a big rotary. So he's blocking a lane in a rotary, which is quite dangerous. And he got out of his car, began talking to other chalkers. When I grabbed my camera and began approaching him, I noticed he was wearing some sort of identification badge. And I heard him say something about asking people to stop chalking as though he had some authority to do so. When I went to film his badge, he raised his hand and pushed it away. And I guess as he was doing that,
Your
he
camera?
also... Yes.
Wow.
Pushed my camera away. So he basically assaulted me. I believe he also hit someone standing next to me as that happened with his arm. And, you know, we asked him, like, who are you? Like, what authority do you have to do this? And after some conversation, we learned that he was the parks manager for the city of Keene. And he was claiming his authority as a city bureaucrat to get us to stop chalking, which nobody, of course, obeyed that order.
That is just ridiculous. Speaking of bureaucrats who are there, we have a video of the event showing Officer Bowers chalking in Central Square.
Love it.
That's so cool. Thank you.
All right, guys, have fun. Thanks.
Great.
Big
Thanks
points.
so much.
Thanks,
Have a
Peter.
great day.
Appreciate it. No other cop blockers are going to have that video.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah, that was great on the part of that officer.
So the Keene police didn't seem to be too upset about the chalking?
No, it seemed like, I don't know in particular who he called, but he made a phone call while the bureaucrat was there, and presumably it was to the police. 2 officers did respond a few minutes later, and they didn't seem bothered by anybody. They walked through the square, said hi, and walked along. And then I guess after they had passed through the squares when they met up with the others who had gotten the video of the officer chalking the sidewalk.
I see. So does the officer chalking, does that... Obviously, after that, they can't make any arrests because you would have this evidence of a police doing the exact same thing. So it's kind of nice to see the police actually participating in the activism.
It was a very actionable expression of the fact that chalking is legal and that even the Keene police think chalking is legal, even if some of the suits in Keene do not.
So what about the arrests in Manchester? Why are activists in Manchester getting arrested for something the Keene police themselves will do?
I believe it stems from where the chalk is limited to. In Manchester, what happened was there were 2 activists who put chalk on the building of Manchester Police Department. Now granted, in Manchester the protest was over specific actions that had just happened where officers had been cleared of beating and in another instance killing a man inside his home during a raid. So there was a very specific reason for that protest. So even though the people had chalked the building in particular, they began coming after everybody that was there. I was arrested not for chalking, but for refusing to move from the chalked area fast enough.
Right, and they were calling it vandalism.
Yes, they were calling it, they tried to say it was both breaking a city ordinance against graffiti and also a violation of the criminal mischief statute in the state of New Hampshire, which says that you can't alter something that you don't have permission to or you don't have authorization to be altering in some way.
Ah.
And you've already been to court about that, is that correct?
Well, what I went to court for was disorderly conduct, 2 charges of refusing to move. What the officer said on the stand in my case was, though, that he had arrested me for violating what was in fact a city ordinance regarding moving when there's a group of 3 on the sidewalk. He claimed I was with a group. But what ended up was that was not relevant to the law that they had charged me under, which was disorderly conduct, which only allows the officer to enforce the New Hampshire state laws, not city ordinances, not graffiti ordinances, not moving ordinances, things like that.
Yeah, that group of 3 law, that sounds totally illegal to me, because I have the right to assemble, don't I? I mean, that's one of the provisions of the First Amendment. I guess you don't have that right.
So if I may ask, what were some of the messages being written today during Chalk the Police?
Well, Chalk the Police Day focuses primarily on both abuses by the police and also systemic problems caused by the police's actions, such as the drug war. So there were some drug war focused messages, there were some general self-ownership messages, liberty messages, calling back Cop Block's motto, badges don't grant extra rights. I believe that was chalked in a few places today.
So is this meant to be just like a freedom of speech type event, or is it directly to be messaged at the police officers to try to promote change?
Well, I guess since it's a general outreach to the police, but also the general public, the idea being it's in a very public place for a lot of people to see. I'd like to think that the police think about the messages that are out there. It seemed today that the police were already where they needed to be on the message of chalk being legal, and it was city officials who didn't understand the rights of the people.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that any efforts to, like we saw in Manchester, to end chalking, public property, do you consider that to be censorship?
Since the Manchester arrests in June, there have been a few events where there have been public chalking, and unfortunately, unlike Keene, Manchester police haven't gone so far as to participate. But they haven't made any chalking arrests, with the exception of one arrest for chalking on the Manchester courthouse.
Interesting. Well, it's very important to keep freedom of speech alive.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's our last thing we might have.
Mm-hmm.